Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast in this great Communities Unite series. Today, I'm joined with three great people from the IBD community or IBD world because it's getting r really bigger now with with the awareness of IBD and everyone sharing their stories. So today, I'm going to get everyone to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Sharon because you are my first on my screen. So start with you.
Thanks, Mason. I'm Sharon from London, and I've had Crohn since 2002, so just over 20 years now. Before my diagnosis, I had symptoms for about 6 months. They came on very suddenly. It started with weight loss and abdominal pain, diarrhea, went back and forth. The GP thought it might just be indigestion. And because I was anemic at the time as well, they kind of were worried about like the nutritional side of things. So there wasn't really any definite answers. And I remember my first ultrasound came back clear as well. So it was very confusing until I was actually diagnosed. But I think compared to other stories I've heard, being diagnosed within 6 months was actually pretty quick. So I guess I was lucky in that sense. After my diagnosis, I had an NG tube for around 12 weeks. After that, unfortunately, things didn't settle. So then I was put onto a course of prednisolone, which after coming off that, again, same thing. But then I was on azathioprine for a couple of years, which did settle things down. And I did also have a right hemicolectomy a year after my diagnosis because there was a small part of inflammation that just wasn't settling no matter what they tried. And my pediatric GI at the time felt that having surgery would be a better treatment option than just trying to push whatever medication they could. And that worked out well for a couple of years. I started flaring again when I went to university, which carried on for several years. Unfortunately, when I transitioned to adult care, I kind of got lost in the system. I spent about 5 years on steroids until I was finally approved for infliximab, which was like a miracle drug for me. I felt better. I think with the first infusion, I could see it making a difference. After that, I was switched to adalimumab because they just felt it was more convenient as a student and it would save me having to go into hospital for the infusions. Unfortunately, a few years after that, I developed a stricture, which led to an obstruction. So then I had a subtotal colectomy, and then I had an ileostomy for about 2 years. It was reversed at the end of 2016. I've since switched to ustekinumab, and I've been well on that since. And yeah, that's my journey so far.
Thank you for sharing because like yeah, like you said at the start there, 6 months is pretty quick in terms of getting diagnosed. Um,
Yeah.
it's good in a way that for yours getting diagnosed, it was that quick because it can be really irritating not knowing what's happening. Thank you for that. And we'll definitely talk more about it because there's some things there that I'd like to talk about more with you. But thank you for sharing. Rue?
Hey, so I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2005, so it was just after I finished university. And I guess the initial symptoms were, I guess, quite common: weight loss, lots of urgency. Then it kind of progressed to blood in my stool. I was pretty scared, and it took me a while to go to the doctor. But actually, after I did go, the diagnosis was pretty quick, I would say. I was quite lucky to be diagnosed quickly. I was also lucky in that it kind of settled down by itself. So I was given a course of, I can never say it, malazine. You know what I mean. So I took that for probably 5 to 6 years as I kind of settled into work. And I don't think I was ever kind of fully in remission, but it was kind of livable. I would say my quality of life was decent. It wasn't perfect, and I just dealt with the fact that sometimes I'd have to rush to the toilet. I just kind of got used to it. That I just accepted it. Shortly after I got married in 2010, it started to sort of progress, and I was struggling a lot more. So I started a course of steroids, and for me that was the miracle drug. In that within days I just felt like completely back to normal, better than I'd felt for a long time. But the problem was that I couldn't get off steroids. So every time I started to taper, I'd get down to say 15 milligrams or 10, and then the symptoms would start to flare back up again. So then we introduced azathioprine, and I was in the process of trying to balance out azathioprine, and I guess find the right dosage of that to be able to wean off the steroids so I could just be on the immunosuppressants. But after a couple of years of azathioprine, like going through that process and trying and failing to get off the steroids, unfortunately, I got to the point where I was losing weight quickly, suddenly had a massive bleed at home, and I had to go to hospital, and it turned out I had a tumor in the bowel, which turned out to be lymphoma, and that kind of penetrated all the way through the colon. So when I started chemotherapy for that, what actually happened was the tumor just kind of, the chemotherapy was aggressive, and the tumor just kind of disintegrated, and the bowel just perforated, so it had to be removed. So I had a subtotal colectomy, and now I have an ileostomy, and I've had that for, I guess, almost 9 years now. It's permanent. There's no option to reverse because of the state that I'm in. I guess it caused a bit of a mess inside, and when they did the operation, they had to sort of cut very low. So I was told there's not really enough left at the bottom to be able to join things up again in the future. But I think I'm kind of okay with that. And to be honest, my quality of life since having it, since getting used to it, finishing the chemo and settling into it and finding a routine, is probably better than it was when I was, 21, 22. So I feel like I'm lucky in that it's, it's an improvement for me, based, certainly compared to how I was in my early 20s when I first started to struggle with colitis. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks for sharing, really. Like, it's nice to have. So far, we have a nice combo with Crohn's and ulcerative colitis there. So.
1-1 so far.
Yeah, 1-1. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to you, Rue, because as we've probably heard so far, with all these names of different medication we have to take, it's like it's so complicated to remember, isn't it? Because there's so many of these names that are very complicated. Surakhsha, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've had Crohn's disease since 2007. That's when I was diagnosed. I was 11 years old, but I did have symptoms since 9 years old. So it did take me a good couple of years to get a diagnosis. Like Sharon, my GPs thought it was like just indigestion and prescribed me Gaviscon and all these heartburn medications that just didn't work. From what I remember, like, I'll be honest, a lot of my early Crohn's journey is a bit of a blur. But my initial symptoms were drastic weight loss, really bad pains, like abdominal pains, and just not being able to keep any food or water down, really. So my first hospital admission was about 2 months long. I had to get transferred to another hospital to have the colonoscopy and biopsies done and to get the diagnosis. And my treatments, mainly from paediatric, was elemental diet with the NG tubes. I was very steroid responsive, so I was on prednisolone a lot. I was also on I struggle to say it as well, mesazoline or something like that, but it didn't work for me. So I was told like a lot of Crohn's treatments early on would be trial and error, and that was the case, unfortunately. Sorry. And I remember I flared pretty much every single year. I would end up in hospital, and each time it would be a good few weeks at a time. I've been on biologics. I can't remember them all, I'll be honest with you. At 13 years old, I had my first small bowel resection because my Crohn's was in the end of my small bowel, so it was easy for them to just chop it out and put it together. I had another resection at 15. I was advised to get a temporary ostomy, but I was so against it. My family was against it, so I didn't. And then I ended up to the point in 2016, I think. I can't even remember. But I was 19 years old and my Crohn's just got in such a bad state that I had no choice to get an ostomy, and at that point it had to be a permanent one. But I've been in remission since. I'm going to be with my ostomy for 8 years next year. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, like kind of like like you've had it for like a while, like you guys
Yeah.
have like these stomachs, yeah. Yeah.
Even Crohn's, like I realized the other day I've had it more than half of my life, and that was just like such a big shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll quickly say a little bit about my my journey as well. So I have Crohn's, and I was diagnosed more recent. Well, I say more recent, more recent than you guys. I was diagnosed in 2017. And I was about 16, turning 17, and it was October. So it wasn't long ago. It was kind of Crohn's anniversary kind of thing. Um, and so what happened? I was quite fortunate because my birthday is in September. And I remember going go-karting with friends, and I was okay then, but I just know that like people, more my family knows that I looked a bit different, like maybe not myself, and like and then literally a day or so after my birthday, I couldn't eat anything. I lost a lot of weight, like blood as well, and stools, which as you know that it's not nice when you see the blood the first time in the toilet, and yeah, and so I lost an awful lot of weight, and then I had to go on the liquid drinks, which I didn't like either, so I weren't winning there. um and then I got diagnosed pretty quickly, I'd say. um it was pretty fast, but at the same time it was hard to get seen properly because they were going to delay me getting seen at the hospital because like to get an appointment. And what happened was is um they said I had my to get diagnosed, I had the colonoscopy, um, and like I had all the dreaded prep. But the thing was, I was empty anyway. I didn't even need to go to the toilet. Like what is most it meant to meant to go to the toilet. I was empty enough anyway. I wanted to go. I got to the stage where I wanted to go. I thought something's wrong here. Like I'm supposed to be going to the toilet half a dozen times, and I didn't. And then once the colonoscopy is finished, they say to me that you're one of our best people to actually have it quite empty. I was like, oh, really? um, but that was probably due because I wasn't eating anything and feeling bloated and stuff like that. So I had that done, but like the consultant said afterwards that it was good that I did have it there, like pushed to get seen and stuff, because if I didn't, I would have needed surgery. Um, and with with going on to different medication. My first biologic was infliximab, and that was good. I felt a good difference from the first infusion, but it only lasts for about a year. And I wanted to get to the 10th infusion, and then I went for the 10th infusion, then I had a reaction to it, and then straight after that I went on to Humira adalimumab, if I can say the word properly. Because yeah, I've been on that ever since, and I still take like azathioprine. So as you guys can imagine, it's not a nice combo because like with making you really immunocompromised. So having to be pretty careful with the medication you kind of have to take.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on azathioprine as well as combination therapy, and I've been trying to get off it for years, but it just doesn't. Ustekinumab just doesn't seem to work without it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I guess it is what it is, as long as it works.
Yeah, yeah. I have to take it every 2 weeks. It actually worked out quite nicely in a way because I was on it as soon as the infliximab finished. Like it was just before the pandemic kind of started and things, and then I was doing the injections at home for a while before it started, so in a way, it was good. And I was advised to actually start the Humira first before the infliximab, because and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go on the infliximab, so I was in hospital after it was quite soon after getting diagnosed, and I didn't want to go on something at home in case I was doing it wrong. But it worked in a way in terms of COVID and stuff where, as you can imagine, probably quite a lot of people did have not been diagnosed during those, like especially at the start of the pandemic, because it like a very tough time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Everything slowed down so much because of COVID.
Yeah, it has, and it's like it's like for people like us on those kind of medication. It's really hard because of course like it's better to work from home, I think, like if you're in that kind of situation, and it's hard for other people to understand, isn't it? Like if you're trying to explain yourself, they just go by what the rules are now. Like like there's no rules, that there's no shielding really anymore, like in terms of COVID, is there? So it's hard to explain to people that maybe don't understand. Yeah. So with you guys, what like because did any of you know before your diagnosis like what IBD was, or was it kind of your first time hearing about like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis?
I didn't know anything about it until I was told I had it, and I was given a leaflet and sent away.
Mhm.
And I read the leaflet and kind of talked about the various treatments, and it did. I think it mentions the chances of progression, and there was some stat around maybe it was 25 to 30% of people with colitis can end up having surgery, and I just kind of put that in the bin and I literally put that to the back of my mind. I just thought that's not going to happen to me. I was pretty blasé about it as a kind of slightly ignorant 22-year-old guy. I just kind of thought, I'll take the medicine, I'm sure it'll help.
Yeah.
And that was my initial reaction. But obviously you learn more as you go, don't you? You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about IBD or Crohn's until it was mentioned to me. Even when they mentioned to me, like when you're young, I feel like you're really naive to like such a lifelong diagnosis. And they told me there was a cure for it, but I never anticipated the amount of treatments or how bad it can get. Or I never went out my way to like really do any research about it either. Back then it was all like online forums that they gave me loads to go on, but I wasn't interested in it, if that makes sense, which is quite weird considering it's my life now. But yeah.
Like, I mean, it was the same for me. I had no idea what it was or how it happened. I was relieved to get a diagnosis because they finally found out what was going on. But like Rue said, were handed leaflets. My parents were handed leaflets. I kind of skimmed through them and thought, okay, how do we get better now? And so I can leave and go home. Because I was in hospital for almost 2 months that first time I was diagnosed. And I just wanted to get out of there. And I think we were all diagnosed early 2000s, the three of us. The information then was very vague. And I feel like the delivery of the diagnosis was quite vague as well. They didn't really, drill into you that this is a chronic condition, that it shouldn't take away from you living your life, but you will have to make adjustments. I kind of grew up, and as a teenager, I was very reckless with my diet, with taking medication. Sometimes I would take it, sometimes I wouldn't, because I just thought, what's the worst that could happen? And then when I had emergency surgery with the obstruction, I thought, okay, maybe I should have been a bit more careful all those years when I was just ignoring like the obvious signs, even people telling me like, should you be eating that? I used to get offended by people telling me how to live my life when that was probably actually decent advice. Whereas I feel like now people who are getting a diagnosis, they come in very Like they want to find out everything, and there's so much more information out there for them to find out, to read up on. I don't know if there's too much out there now, and I don't know if it's kind of made things a bit scarier for people. Whereas because there wasn't much out there, it was easy to kind of put it to the back of my mind until I flared every time. So I don't know which way is better, but yeah, I feel like over the years it's very different when people receive their diagnosis.
Yeah, I completely agree, and like I know I was a bit further down the line getting diagnosed like than you guys in the early 2000s, because I was born 2001. I was.
All right. God, I feel so old
Make
next
us
to you.
feel old.
But yeah, I got given the leaflet as well, so it was like that terms of things, and I think I had some nurse sitting next to me saying, you might have to adjust things and stuff like that, which I read it a little bit, but I wasn't that bothered about it really. Like I just went home, went on Google and typed Crohn's, what is it, on there, because I prefer I prefer to read it, you know, rather than on a leaflet. I don't know. I just I see on leaflets there's so much there. It's kind of hard to process it all, especially after you just got diagnosed.
Mm.
I think the issue with a lot of the information is and in a way I can see why, but it's just kind of cold, hard facts about the condition. There's nothing really reassuring there to say, this is your diagnosis, but look at all of these people who are actually, doing well with life. They're achieving what they want to, living with it. Which I guess is what a lot of us are trying to achieve by doing what we do on social media. I guess the issue is, to something that Sharon said, like you can't have too much. It can be information overload, and obviously it's not curated. So, most people are there with the best intentions, but it's very easy for somebody to say something that maybe actually is kind of triggering and maybe doesn't help somebody. So it's hard to find the right balance.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think it should be maybe more positive as like when you're going through your diagnosis, because like you get told it's all like maybe all doom and gloom that you can't do that, you can't do that, but there are stuff you can do. Like you can still do things, but there'll just be maybe adjustments you have to make. Like there'll be things that you maybe miss. You might miss I don't know, you might miss like if you can't eat a certain food, which it might be maybe spicy foods that you liked and you can't have it anymore, or something like that. But like you can just adjust it, and who knows, in the future you might be able to go back to something in the past that you might not have been able to have at that specific time.
Yeah, I think like Rue mentioned, when you're just given leaflets, you flick through it. It doesn't really you don't connect in any way, and I think that makes it easier to disregard the information. Like for example, when I woke up with an ostomy for the first time, before that I'd never even heard of what a stoma is, what it's going to look like, what I'm going to wake up to. I just remember them marking an X, and I thought, okay, it's probably going to be similar to like a catheter bag. We'll figure it out when I get to it. But when I spoke to my stoma nurse afterwards, I said it would have been nice to maybe, I don't know, maybe have some kind of like mentor program where you could chat to someone who has an ostomy or has had one for a couple of months, just for some reassurance, because in that moment it feels like the worst thing ever. But a couple of months down the line, you realize, like when your life gets back on track, it's actually not so bad. And I feel like it's similar to obviously the IBD diagnosis, that I don't know, and I guess this is what the IBD community has done for a lot of people that wasn't happening before. It's created that space where you can go and you can see people living their lives, having relationships, successful relationships, successful careers. So I think that was a huge factor for me that was missing when I was diagnosed.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it was hard, you know, like when I was diagnosed because I was in the last year of school, like year 11, and it was exams kind of period as well. Um, and the school was understanding, but I think part of the annoying thing was because I was part of this drama group, and only a few of us in the year were able to do it. Um, um, and I wasn't there, and I missed some bits, and like of course you can imagine how like maybe stressful that was because like people will be like saying, "Where are you? We need you to do this. We need you to do this." And luckily, it wasn't like years that it took to get diagnosed, because I think it was really tricky, and the even though because the main symptom before leading up to my diagnosis was like when having when having the flare, having a burny sense like feeling in my stomach, it was like really burny. um it was, and it wasn't, it weren't friendly. And I don't know about you guys, but like you know, when you go for a flare and it's an emergency and you have to go to the hospital, and they say you have to go to A&E. And I always say like A&E is for like emergencies, but not like medical chronic illness emergencies. It's more like if you've maybe you've had an accident like on the path. It's not like we wouldn't be there like if it weren't maybe for ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. So I'm always seeing if there's other options to do that, or like another room that you could go to somewhere else other than that, because they see you and they say like what's wrong with you, because they don't see like a broken arm or like an injury like physically, but it's more like they're not going to see it on the inside, are they?
Yeah, I've noticed like in A&E, I've had a lot of admissions through A&E, and I've always had to wait like hours on end because they need like a gastro specialist or a surgical specialist to come and see me, and they've not been available like within a reasonable amount of time. I noticed like A&E staff, they aren't quite specialised when it comes to IBD anyway. I've never really been for anything other than IBD. But yeah, it's pretty awful having to wait.
I think like you mentioned as well, you almost feel like you don't deserve to go to A&E because, and that's what my mum felt when like her friend said to her, your daughter got so sick to a point where, you know, she couldn't get out of bed, she couldn't eat, she couldn't drink. Why did you not just go to A&E whenever your GP was disregarding the symptoms? And my mum was like, well, we kind of assume that it's an emergency department, so we never thought let's just take her to A&E because we assumed that we would just get sent right back. But luckily my pediatric care was actually really good, and they specified that every time I flare or anything kind of kicks off, just go straight to A&E, and they would report to the ward that I would normally be admitted to, that she's been admitted, and they usually would come down and see me within the hour and have me admitted. It was very quick there. Adult care was very different. Like Surakhsha mentioned, you end up being there for hours. All they can give you is paracetamol, which doesn't do anything when you're going through a pretty severe flare. And you just wait for hours. The only good thing is, of course, like if you've got vomiting as well, then they do give you anti-sickness intravenously, which would at least calm that part down. So I guess it's better than being at home. But yeah, it was always a very long wait. But you kind of always knew the path. You just spend hours in A&E. Then sometimes I would get sent to that like clinical decision unit they had here, where they decide where to send you if there's no gastro doctors around. And then I would eventually end up on a gastro ward, and they would start off like the treatment, which back then used to just be IV steroids before I started biologics. But until biologics, it was very regular trips to A&E, which led to admissions every time.
That's what I've noticed as well. And I don't remember like being told about biologics in paediatric care. It's only when I came up to the end of paediatric care and transitioned to adult care I was told about biologics. I'm not sure if that's changed now, but I think it should be.
I think it has, but it was similar. I was actually told about infliximab in 2003. I was also told that I'm not a severe enough case to be on it, and they said that there's no chance I would get approved because of, I guess, my pediatric GI said that they had tried it with some of their other patients and it had been rejected. So they didn't think it would be approved for me. So he mentioned it, but then it kind of felt like, why are you kind of dangling this in front of me and then telling me, by the way, you can't have it? But it is really successful in the US. So I always knew about it, but then from 2003, I wasn't put onto infliximab until 2011. So it took a very long time. It took 3 rejections, even when I was in adult care, for me to actually get onto it, because they kept saying that I wasn't serious enough to be put onto it, which I think is very different now. I think it's a bit easier to be put onto it, and it's actually becoming kind of like the first, I don't know what the term is, but I've noticed I've noticed a lot of patients tend to go straight onto it.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, because after I like first I was on steroids, and then I etofibrine, and then that's the first one I'm put on in infliximab, and like the only thing I don't like about infusion is maybe the cannula sometimes because I always make sure I drink like a litre or two before I go for any kind of injection or infusion, and sometimes because I think I got good veins because they always get it in first time, and then if they say I can't find a vein, I get really confused because I've drunk like 2 litres of maybe water or juice before I've gone, and then they say to me, I can't find it. They spend maybe 3 minutes on my left, and then they say, can we switch arms? And they say, yeah, and then they go straight back to the left, and they're like, oh, look, I can see it. It's quite funny.
I hate when that happens. Usually it's like a student nurse or a junior nurse who will start off, and then they'll do like 2 attempts, and they're like, oh, didn't get it, so we're just going to wait for the senior nurse to come and cannulate you. But yeah, it ends up being quite a long day when you're going for an infusion, because just getting cannulated sometimes would take up to an hour, and then the infusion itself, and then they would always run the saline solution afterwards. So as a student, I felt like it was taking up too much of my time, and I was in my final year at university then, so I wanted to you kind of don't want to be there. It was very hard for me to study. It used to make me very sleepy, the infusions, so they always used to say, just take your work with you and do it there. I used to fall asleep every single infusion, so I was like, this just isn't working out. So the doctor agreed that switching me over to adalimumab, which is quite similar, like the makeup apparently, they felt that it would be much easier for me to just self-inject, which isn't very easy to do, but I eventually got the hang of it.
Yeah, it is pretty tough. I'm still don't inject myself. I'm too scared to. But yeah, like because every 2 weeks, like I said before, I have it, and like just to calm my nerves, or either it's quite funny. I'll scream, but just to let it out, or I laugh. It's either one of the two, and then I reward myself after with a lolly or something, or some ice cream, just to say I've done it for another week. But
Yeah, that is the one thing I struggled with like Humira, that it's very regular, whereas like ustekinumab is every 6 weeks, so I've got 6 weeks to prepare myself for the next dose. Whereas with that, because it took me years to get used to self-injecting with the Humira, because I don't know what it's like now, but it was kind of like a EpiPen type injection then, and just that kind of like pushing the button used to make me jump. And one time I pulled it back out after I injected, and it just started spraying everywhere. And my mum ran up to go get a tissue. She stubbed her toe on my bed.
Oh.
It was just chaos. And I lost the injection. But then I thought, I can't even inject myself again because I don't know how much went in and how much has just gone all over my bedroom carpet. So yeah, after that, I was always just like, okay, I hope it doesn't go the same way again. So I used to get my mom to just hold my arm. As soon as I injected, she would just hold my arm down for 10 seconds.
Yeah, I've had a pretty similar situation where like the injection went in and then it got taken out when it weren't fully done. And then I think I ran up my RBD nurse to see what's going to happen. Like, should I do another one now or continue? So like I just waited next 2 weeks. But in the way, I prefer the injections than the infusions. But I prefer the time scale of having an infusion than having the Humira.
Yeah, like the gap in between.
Yeah. And like some people do have them every week. So I guess I consider myself lucky. I only have them 2 weeks. When did you kind of guys like, because you were diagnosed early 2000s? How long after that do you think you maybe decided to kind of maybe speak publicly about it more so, or create your social media accounts to kind of raise awareness?
For me, I mean, I didn't go public, I guess, until like 2017. I joined Crohn's and Colitis UK at the time as a local volunteer. It was after my stoma reversal. For some reason, having the stoma reversal affected me mentally a lot more than it did having the ileostomy. I think just kind of reversing it felt like I'd taken a few steps back, which was hard for me to deal with at the time because I kind of thought to myself, everything was fine. I was dealing with it fine. I was playing netball, going swimming. I was working. So why did I have it reversed? So I thought I'm going to join somewhere where I can speak to people who will get it. And joining as a local volunteer, we did like regular coffee mornings locally. And we did quite a lot of events for fundraising. And that made me feel like I finally found people who fully understand like the day-to-day. Your family, friends, they understand to an extent, but no one gets it like we do. Like the day-to-day and the fatigue and, your diet and having to plan your day out, like literally to the hour to make sure that nothing kind of, you basically prepare for everything whenever I would step out of the house. That's how it was for me back then, because having it reversed meant that the urgency returned. So that was difficult to deal with as well. And then from there, as I felt more comfortable and more kind of like, okay, speaking up is actually helping others deal with their journey of like diagnosis with Crohn's or colitis, then that's when I met Surakhsha online. I created kind of an online platform early 2020, I think around the time COVID happened. And then towards the end of the year, Surakhsha brought a few of us together for a kind of South Asians with IBD post to share our experience, because I guess one thing we both related on is that different cultures experience the condition in different ways, and there's layers to it that aren't really discussed or talked about in our community, in the South Asian community, that maybe we felt needed to be talked about. And yeah, from there we created an online platform where we felt like South Asians could come together and talk about, their condition, their personal lives, and how culture is affecting them. And it's just kind of been going from there. And I feel that in so many ways it has helped me, but in some ways, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm oversharing. So I do kind of pull back a little bit because I feel like I'm constantly in that space, and there's parts of me that feels like I don't always want to be thinking about my IBD.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that, because like you don't want to, like, it's like a safe space, like talking about like this, isn't it? Like you're not just gonna go maybe like in work, and work's not like you're gonna talk about, or to someone that maybe who doesn't know you as well, or um do maybe people that understand you. It's kind of better, isn't it, just than maybe people who don't, I think. What about you, Rue? When did you kind of start doing what you're doing?
I think it was 2019. I think I joined Instagram to see what was going on there. I don't. I was questioning this recently. Why did I decide to join then? Because I had the operation in 2014, and to be honest, I was getting on just fine. I wasn't really sort of. I don't think I felt lonely. I think I just felt that I wanted to do something to help, because I guess I thought I'm 5 years into this now, and I feel like I'm coping well. But I remember when I first had the operation, like Sharon was saying, there was nobody there to relate to. There was no mentor. It's, you know, what I really wanted at the time was to be introduced to a 30-year-old guy who was working, who just had a kid, and for them to tell me it's all going to be okay, because, you know, I've got this bag and I can go and do like all the things that you want to do when you get better. And so I thought that's, you know, that's a message that I can share. So that's why I joined, and obviously I found, you know, there's already quite a big community which has continued to grow, and I've just been doing my thing since, really, just kind of on my own terms. I'm not really sort of linked or affiliated to anybody, which is good, because I can just say what I want when I want to. Um, but it is funny. I can relate to something else Sharon said as well, in that it's kind of absorbing and almost addictive, and you can have too much of it, because I went from not really having to think about having IBD much at all. I mean, aside from the fact that I, you know, deal with a bag 6 times a day, you know, that's that was less maintenance than going to the toilet all the time before I had the bag. So actually, that was an improvement, and you know, I can kind of just that was just became part of the daily routine. So you go from not really thinking about it that much to then you start thinking, what can I post about now? How can I help somebody now? You start to get messages from people who want help, and it's like, I'm not a helpline. I can't commit to being there 24/7 to answer your questions or say the right thing. So you have to, well, for me, I have to sort of constantly work on finding the right balance between like doing too much and but still doing something, because I want to do something to help. And I guess I'm still trying to work out like what else I can do to help. But my observation is that there are still not many guys who are willing to sort of share. There are a few, but it would be nice to see a few more just sort of normal guys just sharing normal stuff. Um, so yeah, and at one point I did sort of start to create, I guess not a platform, but I wanted to sort of create a collective of guys. So I wanted to try and get together and get them to talk more. But as I said, it's just it's on top of having 2 kids and full-time job, like trying to get that up and running as well was kind of a step too far. I think it's something I might pick up again in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good idea, because I was actually I was speaking to someone recently about this, and like about like men and like emotions, like finding it hard to kind of speak about our emotions, because it is really hard, and like you say, it's hard just to speak about your own story at the start, and I think that'd be a really good idea for the future, Rude, like if you did that.
I will try. I agree. I think, you know, men are not very good at talking to each other, or
Yeah,
talking full stop, really. So they bottle lots up, and then, you know, they have to find ways to let it out. And, you know, the way I tend to let out my emotions is go for a run and sort of, you know, smash the anger out there. Or now I have Instagram, and sometimes I'll let it out there a little bit, because sometimes you share to help other people, sometimes you share to help yourself, because you want to get something off your chest, and it's actually quite cathartic. So
yeah.
I think it would be good to get more people, more guys especially, you know, doing that to help themselves and to help others.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and I guess doing this kind of helps me in like speak out my emotions, because like hearing about like your story, for example, I let things out about my story too, and like I think like crying, like especially is massively impacted like as well, and like about like maybe things that you're really sad about maybe your IBD life that you don't want to cry to someone, maybe to your friend, like because if I'm sad, I try to hold it in. Or like if I'm with one of my friends, I try to do it at home or just somewhere I'm not seen. Because I get shy and I don't like doing that with many people. Which I think is probably comes to when talking about emotions again, where it's hard to let out. But I think it's a really good way when going for a run or doing exercise there, Ruth, because it does you can kind of, I guess you can scream while you're running and no one's gonna care really. You're
No,
running.
it's processing time. I mean, like exercise is cathartic anyway, but just being on your own, being in the fresh air, having some time to yourself, like, it can do wonders. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of people sort of do the same thing. You know, it doesn't have to be a run. You can go for a walk or just, you know, even just like sit outside in the breeze and just have some time to yourself away from a screen.
yeah.
You know, we're all kind of addicted to screens and we're all kind of suffering from information overload. And sometimes you need a break from all that.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Or even do something that you're interested in, like a hobby. It might be or something like that. But I completely agree. Like it. I guess if we looked at our phones on maybe a daily basis sometimes, and you see the screen time maybe on how long you've used Instagram for a day, possibly, it might be it might be quite a lot.
I'm not going to look.
I- Me too. Um, Surakhsha, what about you? When do you kind of decide to start?
Um, I first so my first interaction with social media was like on Facebook groups. Um, and I literally joined them the night before my surgery because I was desperate for someone to tell me like they've been through the same thing and they're all right, and you know they've achieved so much stuff, and you know like it's not the end of the world, because I had a bag, but at that point I still didn't want it. Um, and it wasn't one of like the more commonly known groups either. It was a more of a quieter Crohn's and IBD group, and it really helped me. It really reassured me. And then after my surgery, I started a blog, but it was more for an outlet of myself, to kind of just like talk about everything I've been through and like everything that I'm currently going through. And then it came kind of like I want to help other young people with IBD feel like that they're not alone, because I felt so alone whilst I was going through it. And then it was after that that I saw there was a huge IBD community on Instagram mainly. So yeah, for me it was all about finding other people who are in the same situation, who are living their life, who are supporting others and helping others. And then I was just like, maybe I should start doing that too on Instagram. So that's what I did. And sometimes it does get too consuming, like Sharon and Lou said, and yourself. So now I try to kind of not just talk about IBD all the time, because I want people to know that there's more to life than just your illness.
Yeah, yeah, I could completely agree. I don't always talk about it all the time either.
I never see you talk about it, to be honest, Mason, only when you do like your
Yeah,
podcasts and share your podcasts.
yeah. Because on the podcast, at the start, I kind of started with talking about IBD, and then I thought there's so many other topics that um I can talk about too with other people, which even learning about new things or maybe another chronic illness that I'm unaware of. Because if you think about it, like we know the chronic illnesses that we have, but there's so many out there, and some people even have more than one, which is
Yeah.
um on this currently series, which there'll be an episode where a person has, I think, about 30 38 chronic illnesses. Um, and uh, I, in a way, I just feel grateful that I only have one, but one is bad enough. And like, so yeah, I normally talk about here about like with podcasts and stuff, but I do like to involve myself around other things because it can be like you say, really consuming and um like if you're not doing so well, and or like you're gonna feel really sad, like if you're in a flare and stuff like that. But you you guys with like with stomas, I imagine, because like it takes a while to kind of get used to maybe your like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. Do you think it's that same concept when you have that stoma bag like to start off with? Is it like a similar process where you've got to kind of get used to that kind of things as well?
I think it's very individual. I will say for me, it was very difficult to process before and after, but only because I'd never had any positive kind of, like, I didn't know of any positive stories, but I didn't go looking for any at the same time, if that makes sense, not up until the last minute. But even after, because I was so against it or not used to the idea, it did take me a while to kind of accept it, if that makes sense. But then once I saw how much it improved my quality of life, like, my opinion just changed it. Because I feel like I'm lucky I did have a positive experience with it. I know not everyone has that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it took me, it definitely took me a couple of months to sort of settle down into a routine and sort of understand how to deal with it, and the sort of telltale signs that you come to learn about, sort of when when the bag needs changing, for example. And as you're kind of working that out, it can be quite difficult, because that's when you tend to have problems. And also, like, at first you don't know like what the right setup is for you. You're given a you come out of surgery and somebody's chosen a bag and they've stuck it on you, just based on what they had in the store cupboard, and it's probably not going to be the one that you're going to end up using longer term. And so you have to spend a bit of time doing some research, and you may, if you're lucky, have a stoma nurse who helps you with that, or you might be there ordering samples by yourself and trying it all. But it does settle down, and I remember I just noticed after a few weeks, after like the surgery had kind of healed, realized, God, I feel so much better now, because with the colitis, I just felt like constant cramping and bloating and pain and urgency. It was exhausting, just feeling like that all the time, just waiting, just that kind of anxiety in the background bubbling away. And I just realized, bloody hell, I actually feel so much better. Like, all of that is gone. Yes, I have to empty this bag into the toilet, 6 times a day, 7 times a day. But aside from that, I feel much healthier. And something that you touched on earlier in terms of diet, I was able to return, to eat foods that I couldn't eat before. I can drink beer now, which if I'd have touched a beer before, it would have literally put me on my back for weeks. Which maybe it's not a good thing that I can now drink beer, because I certainly enjoy that. But it has turned out to be a positive thing. But you have to be really careful when you talk about it, because for me it's positive, and for lots of other people it's positive, but then for some people it's not that at all. And I do worry that sometimes, with awareness, it's kind of a whitewash of positivity, like, look, it's great having a stoma bag, and that is good, it's important, but then you have to acknowledge the fact that for some people it's kind of like sort of rubbing salt in the wound, because it's really not great for them. And the more people they see telling them it's great, the harder it is to deal with the fact it's not for them.
It can be quite toxic positive.
Yeah.
It's such an important point, because before I had mine, the only thing I saw was someone saying that they absolutely hated their stoma. I've obviously had a reversal now, so I'm not in the same position as Rue and Surakhsha. But that obviously scared me even more, because you've got the doctors telling you that, people lead very normal lives with the stoma, you're going to be fine. And because you're young, it's even more positive for you. Like, there's an increased chance of you being completely fine with it. The surgery itself, obviously, because I had emergency surgery, I'd already lost a lot of weight going into it. That made the recovery harder. So I think the initial point was, you're getting used to a stoma, you've got a massive wound that is trying to heal, that you're getting used to as well. You're trying to get your strength back, you're trying to get your weight back on track. There's just lots happening at once. I think it's harder than the diagnosis because it's something very physical that you can see, that you're having to deal with so many times a day. And then when it leaks, you don't really know what to do or why it's leaking. I felt like the support I had from my stoma nurse wasn't that great. It was very much like, you're fine. When I ran out of the adhesive remover spray, I was told to just use water. And I remember thinking, how is that going to take my bag off? Because I was there, like, and it was tugging at my skin. I thought, there's no way I could just remove this with water. So I called the out of hours service, and they had, luckily, a district nurse dropped off more spray for me to use. But I just felt like everything was very kind of, when I asked about support wear, I was told to just go to Marks and Spencer's or Primark and grab like high-waisted underwear and just use those. I actually found like the support wear I found myself, like Conviz, Vanilla Blush, they worked much better for me. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to just look for yourself. There's no one guiding you, no one telling you, oh, it should be this way, or you could potentially try this. My stoma shrunk quite a bit after the surgery. So I had my surgery in February, and by July it was very small, and I started leaking then. I was having like 5-6 leaks a day. I didn't know what to do. So I tried to call the stoma nurses, left a message. I then called Securicare. I wasn't really getting any answers. I was just being sent loads of samples, and I was like, I don't even know what to do with half of these samples. The stoma paste, I didn't know what to do with it or how to use it. I was trying everything that was being sent my way. And then someone in the forums online, I should have probably gone there first. They said that you might need convex bags because they will push your stoma back out. As soon as I switched to those, the leaks stopped. And it's just those little things that you, like Rue said, once you figure out everything that works for you, like I had the convex bags and I had the flange extenders, which just provided a bit more like sense of security for me. And then it's almost like a switch just flips and you kind of go to almost like not even really thinking about it during your day, unless of course you're changing it or emptying it. And then I just kind of went back to like, I traveled with it, I was playing sports again, I was working again. But like Rue mentioned as well, it's not the same for everyone. I was very lucky with my stoma. I had the first 6 months were tough, but after that I had a very easy, like 1.5 years. I didn't have any issues, didn't have any leaks. So I was definitely very lucky with my stoma experience. But I know it's not the same for everyone. And I've heard some people say like they've begged to have stoma surgery because they're under the impression that it's going to resolve everything and take away from having flare-ups again or having any of these symptoms, or that it's going to cure them. There's so much misinformation out there, I think, from all this very like positive attitude that can sometimes be dangerous. So yeah, I guess just finding that balance is really important with the information that is out there.
Yeah, because it's really interesting, like because like hearing all your stories are to do with stomas as well. Because like you say, I think it is quite it's quite like important to keep a balance, because like you do see quite a lot of good things about stomas going out there, but of course not everything's going to be good. It might have some bad things about it too. So it's good that it's good to talk about that, because like especially on Instagram, you see quite a lot of positive things out there about on stomas and everything. But I think if it helps, it helps. It's good if it does. But even though with our journeys, it's always important to if you're doing it quite a daily basis like us, like we talk about quite a lot of the time, it's important to maybe speak about the bad times, like not always when you're doing brilliant. I know it's hard to talk about when you're not having a great time, but I guess it helps other people who are maybe in a similar situation. Oh yeah, I forgot to say when we were speaking about Instagram when I joined, didn't I? Well, of course, as you know, I was diagnosed in 2017, so it was 2020 since just to kind of start the pandemic when I started, and this podcast started as well. So I kind of made the choice to create a Crohn's an IBD account just to first of all meet people, because I didn't know on Instagram you had such a large community, um, and rather than my normal like friends, I didn't want to put it on a page where maybe no one had Crohn's or no one knew what Crohn's was, because I just felt like maybe people get annoyed with seeing it, like they don't want to constantly see my journey as such, where people who understand or know Crohn's, what Crohn's is, do. So I thought that was it was actually helpful, especially like with mental health wise, like not knowing anyone at the start and now knowing quite a lot of people now, like quite a lot of years on for all of us, I guess. So we know a good group of people that have IBD.
Mm.
Yeah. One of the last questions, guys, before we kind of finish. Um, do you like because of fatigue really impacts IBD, but like, do you think we get more tired because it gets darker now and like do you think that impacts us maybe get more tired as well, like with fatigue?
Do you mean the change of year?
Yeah, yeah,
Change
yeah.
of year. There's a nice get shorter. It's funny. I think generally everybody starts to feel a bit sort of tired and run down at this time of year, because as the nights are getting shorter and the weather's changing and you're kind of approaching the festive season and you know that there's a bit of a break coming, I personally feel like I'm just kind of grinding away, waiting to get to the Christmas holidays and so I can have a bit of a break from work. And I think, generally people feel like that, but um, I mean, touching on fatigue for a second, I know a lot of people do suffer with fatigue. Some still suffer with it after surgery as well, and this is why it's so individual. For me, I've not really suffered with fatigue anywhere near as badly since having surgery. I think because generally my body is just in a healthier place now, and I'm kind of able to maintain weight, and I just generally have more energy and feel fitter than I did before I had the surgery. So I guess that was another sort of positive outcome. But it definitely seems to be something that affects a lot of people pretty badly.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Sharon? The fatigue affect you?
Yeah, it does quite a bit actually. It's interesting that Rue mentioned like when I had my stoma, I felt like my fatigue had gone as well, and I felt fitter. But that I guess was down to the fact that my diet opened up. I was eating more, and just generally felt much healthier. I was pain free, so the reversal kind of reversed more than just the stoma, I guess, in a sense, and the fatigue came back quite strong. And since then, I found it quite difficult to maintain my iron levels because of like lack of absorption and just my diet being very up and down and appetite as well. So depending on where my iron levels are at, it's worse than some days. I recently just had an iron infusion, so I'm hoping things will pick up. But I quite enjoy this time of the year, so I think in a way, I don't know, it boosts my energy. It doesn't help that like the days are shorter, but I like festive season, so I feel like I just have more energy generally because I'm looking forward to the holidays.
Yeah. Well, we all love Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Surakhsha, what about you with fatigue?
I definitely don't feel as fatigued as I was without my stoma, and when my Crohn's was really bad. I do still get quite tired and drained out now, but I do feel like my fatigue is impacted by the weather as well. Like even when it's rainy and cloudy, I will just like much rather just be in bed all day, because I just have like no energy to do anything. I feel like I have no energy. But in winter, I even though I was born in winter, I don't like it because I just want to hibernate, stay indoors, not do anything. But at the same time, I do love Christmas, so I do get excited for that and want to decorate and everything like that. But
yeah. I think Christmas is it's a really good time of the year. Um, like it is, and like with me, fatigue. I do remember fatigue. Of course, I haven't got a stoma, but I remember it in the sense that I remember what my life was like before I was diagnosed with Crohn's because I was 16 or 17. So um I remember how not how much tired maybe I get now, and um like yeah, I get more tired, and it's really sad when people don't understand, because there's been situations maybe at school or college where like they're doing sport and PE, and I was that shattered. I tried my absolute hardest because we're playing football, indoor football, and I like football. And I wanted I wanted to be the best person there, that people knew that, like pass to me, and I tried so hard, and then my team got to the final because it was a competition kind of thing, and I sat on the bench because I was exhausted. I was so tired. I wanted to go for a nap. Okay, a nap for like an hour or so, and then the teacher it really got to me in a way, but I didn't say anything because I didn't see the point. It wouldn't have changed his way of thinking of what I'm gonna say. Like he said, are you gonna let your team down because like because in his mind he thinks I can't be asked to play the final for some odd reason, and in my mind I'm too tired, but I did play in the end. I was so sore as well. So that is like now like more like fatigue now, but before I would much prefer for fatigue not to be as bad. But I guess maybe it puts on you depending maybe certain medication you take might make you tired, like maybe like going for an infusion. Like that is especially very tired. Like where I went for the infusions where Germany Carl was on. Of course, Germany Carl's not on anymore, but it was on in the background. And I just loved the feeling that I was having my infusion. Then you got some guy shouting in the background. It kind of helped me keep awake in a way, because when Jeremy Cole shouts, and then it kind of keeps you awake. So helped me a little bit.
It's frustrating. I find fatigue very hard to explain, and I don't think even when you try to explain it's different to just being tired. I feel like it just goes back round to the same conversation. I remember one of my ex-managers saying to me, oh, well, we're all tired, aren't we? We're all trying to get our work done here. We're all tired. So I don't see how it's any different. You're younger than me, so you shouldn't be, you can't, there's no way you can be tired as I am. And you kind of just, I feel like sometimes I get to a point where I don't even have the energy to explain it. So I'm like, okay, you believe what you want to believe about fatigue, and I'll just do me. But even conversations with my GI, like she said as well, that it's one of the hardest things for them to try and treat or to try and help patients with, because it's one of those symptoms that are just difficult for them to do anything about. They can try to obviously up your nutritional levels, help in that way if that's making it worse. But like you said, sometimes it's medication that does it. I do find the day after my injection, I'm wiped out for the whole day, and it takes me about 24 hours to get back on track. So there's so much that contributes to the fatigue that I guess it's just something that you just have to learn to deal with. But it would be much nicer if people understood that it's one of the major symptoms with IBD.
Yeah, it is, and it's not really spoken about enough, really. I don't think, like fatigue and stuff. Because like you say, in life everyone's gonna feel tired. Like if you had a long day at work, you're gonna feel tired. If you're doing work at home, staring at a screen all day, that's really tiring. or even if like Rue, you go out for a run and you're gonna be tired after when you get home. So so it is pretty tough. But like hopefully like I guess like we're going on with the years now, so the more we talk about this stuff, maybe hopefully it helps other people understand.
I hope that in general, sort of, the average workplace is becoming better informed as well.
Mm.
I feel like, I mean, maybe it's because I work in like a fairly corporate environment, but I certainly feel like the places where I've worked have sort of become better informed over time, and now there are actually sort of disability awareness networks within some companies, and it's quite good. It brings people together, and in my company there are people there who talk about IBD, there are people there who talk about fatigue. So it's kind of surfaced, and it's kind of good because people do read these newsletters that come out, and they become aware. And also I just think generally I think managers are kind of hopefully, I mean maybe not in your case, Sharon, I'm not sure when it happened, but generally I think people are a bit more sort of aware and sensitive,
Yeah,
like maybe than they
no, I
were
agree.
even 5 years ago, or certainly 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was in 2018. And yeah, definitely seen a shift since then. Like my current job now, I mean, I've only been there about a week and a half, but I can already see a massive difference in how much importance they're putting into our well-being, physical and mental well-being.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, they do have like they have these like colleague networks that you can join for various different topics. A lot of focus on health and a lot of focus on flexibility as well. Like they've introduced remote working specifically to allow that flexibility for people who maybe find it difficult to even work hybrid, because hybrid working for me only really works if I'm well and fit, to be able to go to work even a couple of days a week. But I feel like even on ustekinumab, things are kind of up and down some days. So I do have to like monitor very closely like my diet and stuff even now. But it just makes it easier knowing that I don't have to worry about calling in sick because I can just work from home.
Yeah, it's it's much better, isn't it, doing it from home, because you haven't got the stress of going in and as well. By especially if you take like azathioprine with like by logic, Sharon, like that's hard because like I find it really hard now because like with literally no rules in place. Like
Mm.
like with if you're out in the public or if someone goes too close, you say can you step back please? I'm in no compromise, and they either one of three they either can understand, which is pretty rare. It's pretty rare if they completely understand from the go, or they say I haven't got COVID. Like they'll just come out and say I haven't got COVID, or one they'll just get really offended and like be really stroppy about it. So it's really hard.
Yeah, I do feel like the restrictions started lifting maybe a bit too soon with some workplaces. So I had to turn down quite a few jobs. I'm lucky that I'm in a position to be able to do that and be picky about the work I was looking for. But I know some friends who kind of just had to go back to work, and as long as they were protecting themselves, like they would wear a mask and take the extra precautions. They did what they had to do, but it's not very fair that you're kind of put in that very anxious kind of setting. I knew I couldn't do it because I've studied radiography, and I was working as a diagnostic radiographer before COVID. I'd only just gone back. I'd been back for about 3 months, and then COVID happened, and they said, "Oh, we'll try to be as flexible as we can. We'll make sure you're looked after." But I just couldn't see myself being comfortable as a frontline worker in the position that I was in, taking ustekinumab and azathioprine. I just didn't think it was worth it, so I had to make the decision to just drop out.
Yeah, because health is more important, isn't it?
Mm.
I think. And yeah, has anyone here got COVID? Like, have you had COVID?
Yeah, I've had it twice now.
Mm.
The first time after my family went to a wedding, I didn't go because I was so afraid, but I got it from them anyway. And then the second time was when I went to a wedding. Luckily, even with that, I think there was a real fear about getting COVID, and wondering what's going to happen. So the first time it was actually quite mild. I think I was quite lucky, and after about 3 days, I felt okay. The second time hit a lot harder, and that took me about a month to get over. But yeah, I think even with all the precautions, it's hard to avoid because, I mean, everyone's more or less kind of back to doing like very regular things. And I think Surakhsha, you had it quite early on, didn't you?
Yeah, I had it twice as well. I think the first time I had it was 2021, when the lockdown like restrictions were still pretty strict. Everyone was masked up. I think I must have got it from Asda or something because that was the only place I went shopping for my mom. And then that was pretty mild, yeah. I think I was fully recovered before the 10 days self isolation. And then the second time I had it pretty recently, a couple of months ago, maybe during the summer. And it hit me like 10 times as hard. Like I lost my sense of smell, lost my sense of taste. I was literally bedbound. In terms of like every time, even if I sat up in bed, I just got dizzy straight away. So I literally just had to keep lying down. And it took me about maybe 2-3 weeks to recover properly, to be able to get up out of bed and stuff. I don't know why it hit like the second time is a lot worse. I'm not sure if that's the same for everyone else, but I know for me and Sharon, I think it was recent when you had it the second time, isn't it? So
yeah,
quite
August.
often we did have it. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I don't want it again.
No.
But I will admit, I've not had my vaccines. I've not had any COVID vaccines yet. Just like for anxiety reasons. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I've I've had the vaccines, but yeah, I think everyone. I mean, it's fair. You know, it's fair for everyone to do what feels best for them. And I think because of our past as well, there can be like, you know, traumatic experiences attached to medication, and injections and all of that. So it makes it harder for us to even want to have vaccines and things. But yeah, I'm hoping like I won't get it again because for me the second time it was a cough. I had a relentless cough that I just could not get to budge, and it made me very uncomfortable to go anywhere because I was just coughing non-stop. And obviously just everyone gets uncomfortable in a public space if they see anyone coughing. Fortunately, like the cough had started, I was abroad for the wedding and it had already started on the flight back. But I tested negative. I didn't test positive until I think like 3 or 4 days after I was back. But just being on the flight with a cough, I felt very uncomfortable as well. And I just felt like I need to get off this flight. I just feel really bad. But I had my mask on, I kept it on the entire flight. But yeah, like Suraksha mentioned, it just feels like the first time I got it, I kept my distance from everyone, but I still ended up with it. It just seemed really easy to pick up.
Yeah. Well, Rue, have you had COVID?
I think I had it right at the start, but they weren't. You couldn't get a test then. It was like March 20. In fact, I know exactly when it was because it was my wife's birthday, and we went out for a meal, and I started to feel bad on the way back. And then I was sick for like about 2 weeks. I had like massive headache, temperatures, fever, and then the second week it was kind of shortness. It was like basically all the symptoms, but back then you could only get a test, I think, if you travelled to China. Maybe there's one other way you could get a test. So I didn't get a test. Since then, everyone else in my house has had it twice, and I somehow haven't caught it, which is infuriating for my wife. She went from being like very worried about me because I was classed as extremely vulnerable, probably like all of you guys are as well. You know, she didn't want to leave the house, and you know, she wanted to disinfect the mail, and you know, so we were very careful. And then eventually, you know, she got it, the kids got it, and yeah, I just didn't get it, so I was quite lucky. But I mean, they had it sort of. I think it was worse the first time for them, and the second time sort of more mild. For the kids, it was kind of, they were tired for a couple of days and then they were fine, really. For my wife, it was a bit more than that, but overall, it was fairly mild. But yeah, I need to get my booster. It's funny. I at the start, like it's getting a vaccine is a bit like Brexit. It's quite divisive. And within families, you know, there are arguments about people who are having it or aren't having it. My brother started off pushing everyone to have it, and now he doesn't want to get, you know, he's sort of done more research or read more, and he doesn't want to get a booster. And you know, I'm not going to tell him either way what he should or shouldn't do. It's up to him. I think I'll get the booster when I can.
Yeah, it's like a very personal choice, you know, and like I've had 4, and this past year I could have had about 10, because like every few months you get the message on your phone, and last time I had one was like the beginning of the year. It might have even been late last year, and I had a reaction to the first one I had. I remember I had it at like 5 p.m. and then at 3 o'clock in the morning I'm so cold, and I had a temperature the following day, which I later found out that was a side effect of the vaccine I had. And that Pacific one was the one that people got blood clots from at the very start of it. And I come to the fact now is I don't know whether I want another one, because like with research and stuff, it's not like it protects like people who are immunocompromised a little bit, but not awfully a lot. And then like if someone hadn't got an immune system, it protect them more than maybe people like us. And so I don't know whether I want one, because I've recently had my flu jab, so I'm used to getting jabs a lot. And you kind of feel like, you know, I don't want to have one, but I don't know, like it would be my 5th one, and if it was once a year, I'll be happy with that. But every few months feels a bit much, I think.
Yeah. I think I always worry about the side effects as well, because even when I had the vaccine, I felt a bit rubbish for a few days. So I kind of feel like I have to time it. Like when can I afford to not feel great? Because I've been getting emails for the booster as well, but I've just started a new job, so I was like, I can't do it just yet. So maybe a bit like early next year, I'll go for the booster, because if I do feel a bit rough, then I can at least then say when it's been a month that, oh, I don't feel so great. But it's because there's always so much, I feel like, having a chronic condition and even like being clinically vulnerable, it's like having a second job, and you kind of have to like slot in things like, even with my iron infusion, when can I afford to get that done? When do I have time to get that done? Or booking GP appointments. And I feel like this is an added thing on top of that, like the flu vaccine and then the booster. So yeah, for me, I always feel like I just have to figure out when the right time is. But I did have my doubts after the second time I had it as well. So I was like, that was after my 3rd booster. No, so it would have been the first booster, because I had 2 vaccines and then the first booster. And then I had COVID for the second time. So I did start to doubt things a little bit then, because I thought, well, I've been hit pretty hard the second time. So was there any point in having the booster? But I think I'm leaning towards just getting it now, because I'm worried about getting it a 3rd time. but we'll see. I feel like there's no wrong or right, is there?
No.
It's funny what you're saying about timing the injections. I always make sure I get my flu jab on a Monday.
Yeah,
I don't want to ruin the weekends, but if I feel a bit rubbish at work, then it's only
You
work.
don't want to take up your own time.
Yeah.
Like my mum was saying to me, why don't you just go, I've got a week off, just over a week and a half off during the holidays. And I was like, and ruin my Christmas. Why would I do that? It's like I have to time it for work time, because then you actually have a legitimate excuse to say, you know, I'm not feeling well, I'm not great, but I have to give it some time. Not like when I've just started. But that's funny, because I generally go for Fridays, so then I have the weekend to recover. But I like your way better.
Oh, you're just a better person than me. I value my weekends too much to be feeling rubbish during them.
Yeah, it's much better to have it maybe that time, but maybe not over Christmas.
No, definitely not.
Not over Christmas. But if I was to have another one, it'll be maybe next year or before Christmas. But yeah, like I haven't got COVID yet. I've been very careful about how I do things. Like I tell people to stay back, don't get near me. And try go to places that are quite understanding and which it's very hard nowadays still. So but but yeah, it's hopefully you guys don't get COVID again, or fingers crossed you don't. Um, but yeah, just touching what Roo said earlier about fatigue, like about maybe more talking about it would be good, as well as other things like fistulas as well, which don't get talking about a lot, which is understandable because you don't just go out there blurting, look, hey, look, I've got a fistula or something like that. But there's so many other things we could talk about, but we could be here all day, couldn't we?
Yeah.
But before we go, I'm just gonna give it over to you guys, just if you want to say anything else, maybe advice, any last words. I'll start with you, Surakhsha, and then we'll go along.
Oh God, no, can someone else go first?
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what to say now. It's gone out my
yeah,
head.
yeah. Who wants to go?
I mean, I can waffle for a bit if you want. I mean, my advice to anybody who's newly diagnosed would just be sort of, you know, take your time and, you know, sort of go through the information at your own pace and make sure that you sort of source your information from the right places to start with, and then when you venture onto social media, if you choose to do that, just take everything with a pinch of salt. You know, just you know, be aware that, you know, it's not completely balanced. It is valuable. It is definitely a positive thing. It's a good resource to have. But, you know, just follow the people that help you. You'll find people there who are like you that will be willing to help. You know, those are the ones that you want to connect with. Just don't get caught up in all of the kind of, you know, the general social media nonsense that you get in every community, not just this one. And if you're somebody who's facing surgery or an ileostomy, I guess my general message generally is, it's a lot of generals, but my message is you can have a normal, happy life after surgery. You know, it's different for everybody, but there's no reason why you can't do all the things you want to do.
I completely agree there, Roo. I mean, there's some great advice. Surakhsha, do you want me to go to you at the end, or are you okay to go now?
No, I'm okay to go now, sorry. So for newly diagnosed, anyone who's going through a diagnosis, I would definitely say you're not alone. It sounds so cliche, but you're really not. There's a whole community out here. You know, it can be overwhelming, but the important thing is to remember, like, there is more to life than your illness, but this is also your life now as well. So try not to be naive. It's okay to be vulnerable, like it's okay to go through the motion, but remember there's more to it. Like, you can live your life like Rue said, you know, you can achieve the things that you want to achieve, you know, you might just need to make a few adjustments along the way. And that's pretty much the same I would say to someone who's going to go through surgery as well. You may not think this now, but it most likely is going to help you and improve your quality of life. We all go through similar journeys, like no one's completely the same. But you know, there's people out there who get it, and there's people out there who are willing to support you. So yeah, just don't be afraid to reach out when you need help.
I completely agree there. But I just want to ask Surakhsha, because like in Portugal, like do you find many people that have IBD in Portugal?
No, I think I found maybe one or two on Instagram, and I've been to a couple of gastroenterologists, but I'm waiting to go to another one because then the care here for IBD, from what I've seen so far, doesn't seem that great, if that makes sense. And one of the gastroenterologists literally told me, like, the IBD community here is not big anyway, but the stoma community is even smaller. So I'm yet to see how things go.
Yeah. Hopefully better.
Yeah, I hope so too. Otherwise, I'll be moving back to England.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's some really good advice. Like, there, definitely, we are not alone. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here now, I don't think. Yeah. So, Sharon.
Yeah, I think I would just say, like, advice I would give myself when I was younger is to really advocate for yourself when it comes to, you know, the healthcare system. Sometimes it's difficult to be heard or to even understand like what path of treatment you should be on. But the only way you really kind of find out is if you keep pushing. I think I spent years on steroids because I didn't think there was another option for me. And I just thought, I think Rue mentioned this earlier, is that that's as good as it gets, like just being on steroids and kind of tapering off, going back on, tapering off. That was basically going to be the rest of my life with Crohn's. But I think it's only when you actually start pushing for better treatment or for them to take you seriously is when things start to kind of turn around, and make use, as much use as you can of, like, you know, the IBD nursing team, if you're lucky enough to have one. Don't ever feel like, you know, your problems aren't like serious enough to reach out to them, which is what I've been told on several occasions. Like, I always used to feel like I'd wait to end up in a severe flare until I would reach out to my team, because I just thought that's what I have to get, that's the level I have to get to for them to treat me. But I think it's much more important to be proactive with IBD, to try and get things settled before it gets to that point, because it's always so much harder to recover, I find. And then another thing I would say is just to look at IBD as treating it with more of a rounded approach. Like, you know, make sure you've got dietary care involved if you can. Mental health is important as well. So if you know, if therapy isn't offered and you feel that you need it, then push for that as well. There's so much more to than just treating the physical aspect of IBD. And I feel like if you take care of all elements of your mental and physical well-being, it can help improve your quality of life.
I completely agree. There, Sharon, because yeah, like the more we like advocate for ourselves, and it really helps, and especially if you go to appointments, making sure to like your voice is heard, not maybe just because you got to really research it, like your disease yourself, because it's hard to trust people, isn't it? Like under your healthcare, because they are, it's your life. Like you could like maybe take something that you're not happy with, or something's been done that you're not entirely keen on. But yeah, advocating for yourself is the best part, and that's why we're here today, because I think we all do that. So we do good at that. But I just want to thank like Sean, Rue, and Surakhsha today, because it's been great. Like having you on and hearing all your stories. I know Surakhsha, that this is your second time on here, so it's been great to have you back. And Rue and Sharon, for your first time on this podcast. It's been great speaking to you and meeting you. But yeah, it'll be great to maybe do this again in the future and keep in contact, because it'll be nice just to see how we're doing time and time again.
Yeah, thanks for the
Thanks a lot, Mason. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a nice Christmas and Happy New Year as well.
Same to you.
You too. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.